Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of Power Nickel's monthly series hosted by Six. I'm pleased to introduce our speaker for today, Power Nickel's CEO, President, and Director, Terry Lynch. Terry's going to walk us through this PDF presentation that he has, and after we're going to be taking questions live. Remember that if you have any questions for Terry, please submit them in the Q&A tab found on the right-hand side of your screen. And as a note, because this is Power Nickel's monthly series, with your registration and attendance today, you'll automatically be notified for any upcoming episodes. But as always, this event is being recorded and it's going to be available on Six.com afterwards. So without further ado, Terry, I'd like to hand things over to you.
Hey, Ken, great to be here. And it's a very timely, good time to sort of update our shareholders and interested investors in Power Nickel. Lots of things happening and all of them good. So we'll walk you through. I thought it might be a good time just to sort of walk everyone through the current deck we're using now, just to get people completely up to speed with the story, and then we'll have some time for some questions that will naturally outflow. So without further ado, I'm going to dive into the deck. We're basically featuring this is Canada's next low carbon, high grade nickel mine. We really think we're going to, be that, and that would be a very popular move for our shareholders. So let's dive into see where that is. Obviously, the typical disclaimer: do your own due diligence. We're not going to tell you anything we don't believe to be true, but always it makes sense to, in these world, to do your own due diligence. Basically, why invest now? We're in the midst of a drill program. If you recall the history of our stock over the last year, we started drilling about a year ago on NISC, and we reported those drill results in March. They were great results. They substantiated the 3.1 million ton historical resource that we had found or had acquired, and with about 1.5, 1.6% nickel EQ, depending on what price of nickel you use. The stock ran up and got to around 30 cents, and then it backed off. And in the hottest nickel market in history, why did that happen? Well, it happened because the shorts came in and pounded it out, as they often do with Canadian mining stocks. I mean, that's why I started Save Canadian Mining. It's this really nasty behavior that's so counterproductive to capital formation in this country. But more about that later. Generally speaking, they came in and tried to do a financing with us, and we said, no, we're not going to ever do that with you guys. And we called our warrants. We said we'd push forward and set up for another drill program in the fall and hope for better markets. And then if we had to and raise money, that we would basically do so by going back to our shareholders and talking to them and before we went out to outside parties. And that's exactly what we did. We basically, have been drilling since mid-September, like what we see. We've said that, before. We thought this was a great deposit. We think it's got unbelievable potential. And so about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I can't remember exactly right now, but we said we'd do this financing, and stock was around 10 cents. And usually when you announce the financing, stock goes down. So stock's today around 14 or so. What's interesting with the financing, we're basically doing it at a unit deal at 20 cents, 70% of it. And thanks to the way the tax system works in Quebec, it's highly advantageous to do what's called a charity flow through. So on a charity flow through, you basically have a Quebec-based taxpayer who has a high income tax bracket, buys the stock from the company at 20 cents, and then it then gets effectively sold virtually the next moment, really, of the transaction when it closes, to the end user investor, in this case for 10 cents. So it gets 20 cents in the company, and the investor gets in at what was the current market price. So it's a great way to get funds in the company in the least dilution possible. And we did it with our existing shareholder group. To the most part, I would say 95% of it was all existing shareholders. That'll close sometime this week. I'm not sure exactly when. I believe Wednesday or Thursday, but it's imminently closed for in the sort of 3.5 to 4 million range. And what's important about that is it gives us the capital to, expand our drill program, both now, which is we'll drill right up until Christmas, and then we'll get back into drilling in mid-January. We'll obviously talk a bit more about the drilling program as we advance through the slides. But obviously, from an investor perspective, you always want to enter stocks, I think, after they're funded, because then obviously they don't need to raise any more capital. That overhang is off. And then you ask yourself the question, what can they do with that capital, and how quickly? So the best scenarios I always find as an investor is when they're actually in the midst of the news right now. So that's the situation with Power Nickel. We've been drilling since mid-September, and we expect to get assay results back in the next couple of weeks, maybe even as soon as next week. And then they should be coming out fairly sequentially from that moment forward for the next 2.5, 3 months. Every couple of weeks, we'll be updating people with the assay results. And then the next thing that would happen is we would basically update our 43-101. In order to do that, we're doing a full metallurgical update as well. So that'll be incorporated in the new 43-101 when that comes out, and we would expect that sort of end of March, early April, somewhere in that time range. So a lot of news, a lot of good things happening. So that's, I think, a great time to identify, to get into a stock. We'll talk about our valuation relative to what we see as our comparables. You'll see that we're massively undervalued. I'll give you evidence of that. You'll make your own assessment of the evidence, but it'll be there for you. I think it's fair to say we think we're on the early stages of a commodity bull market. I mean, nickel was up today, pretty much limit up, I guess. So prices we have used in modeling for nickel has been $8, and as that goes up, obviously your resource base goes up as well, and your economics go up. So I think we're in a very bullish cycle. Plus, I think investors are fearful of the overall market, but still needing places to put their capital, especially in an inflationary environment. They're going to be looking at the resource sector in particular, especially with the problems in the crypto world. And I think they're going to be looking at the battery market in specific. So I think we're in a really sweet spot. So, we think nickel is one of the best commodities to be in. And North American nickel is absolutely the best nickel to be in, because what's interesting with North American nickel is that there's just not enough of it. Number one, class one especially, and the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act in the U.S. that the Biden admin has just passed, gives a lot of incentive for vehicle buyers if they buy vehicles made with a specific amount of North American content. You won't be able to get to that amount of content if you don't have North American nickel, full stop. So that's going to make anybody with North American nickel a very popular, figure. So I expect, we're already dealing with lots of calls from nickel producers and nickel suppliers and nickel trading houses. So that's only going to increase. So these are all very positive things for Power Nickel. Where we're located, it's again, most of us would already be aware of this. We're located in Quebec. It's a phenomenal jurisdiction. I believe it's the best jurisdiction in the world to develop a mine right now, because of the two things, maybe three. Infrastructure, in our case, we're located right off a major highway, right across from a major Hydro-Quebec substation. So phenomenal logistics. We're just down the road from an airport and from a town, so supply logistics are there. The interesting thing is the Quebec government's done an amazing job of working with the native Aboriginal partners in Quebec, and in our area in specific, the Cree are our Aboriginal partners, and they're very pro-mining friendly. We're using a number of their services right now, and there are currently 3 mines being built in that region. So, when you look at investing in mining, you got to assess, country risk and community risk. That's a very big part of your evaluation. So I would give Power Nickel full, check mark on those areas. So I think that's very important. The historic resource that we acquired, from Critical Elements, again, we have to disclaim it is a historical resource. So, until it's verified again in an amended 4311, you can't necessarily rely on it. But obviously, we made the investment because we believe it does exist. We believe our drilling substantiates that, and we believe that we'll have an amended 43-101 out in a few months that greatly adds to this. So this is about 1.6% nickel EQ with about 3.1 million tons. We think when we update this that we'll be showing a commercial amount of tonnage, and I would say that would be to be commercially viable in this marketplace, you sort of have to be at least 7 to 9 million tons, and obviously more as you get forward. But I think we'll get to that level when we update our 43-101, which is a bullish proclamation, but I believe that will be justified in the near future. Let's talk a bit about the deposit and why we like it. It was open at depth and along strike, and we basically, based on that, modeled it up for the first time ever. 3DGO did an amazing job of conceptualizing how the deposit would work, and we executed on that, and we had these great results that led to the stock running in March, and then we believe the next results which will be coming out in the coming weeks, and will be more of the same. I mean, we're not Nostradamus. We don't know exactly what the results will be, but we know we're hitting our target rock, and we know what the intercepts look like. So we believe that they'll be in line with this or better. So that's positive. Where exactly are we drilling? So this, when you look at this map, the yellow and orange and red area, in our internal modeling, that would be resource area right now. The yellow would be sort of, as you can see in the scale, sort of 0.5 to 0.9, I think, nickel. The orange is sort of 0.9 to 1.5 nickel, and the red is sort of over 2. So the most of the initial drilling right now is happening in this white space, which is obviously not modeled because there's never been any drilling there. And so while we perceived there would be resource there, we obviously couldn't model it because it's not been proven. But our drilling is happening there, and our first results will be coming from this area. So we're pretty bullish about what that will do in terms of effectively adding to the resource and adding to the grade. Let's move this along. Okay. So what's interesting, we sort of see, it's not a very, I'm not a geologist, as you know, I'm a business guy and a storyteller, but the geologists tell me that it's a fairly easy deposit to explore. We've identified it's beneath these faults, and it's the way to visualize it is to think of this as like a river of nickel, and the river widens and narrows. It gets deeper and shallower, and it gets more cloudy, i.e., higher grade and more clear, lower grade as you go through there, as it meanders around. And it's pretty interesting how rivers can turn, very suddenly. And this deposit has done that, and we've been able to sort of find the turns. So it's pretty interesting, but it's not been a difficult project to explore, and that's why we're so bullish about exploring it. So these green holes are the holes that have been drilled, and that's when we report, we'll be speaking to these specific holes, and you'll know where that represents on the drilling as to where we're drilling and what's coming. So we've permitted about 30,000 meters of drilling in this immediate area. This yellow area up top represents about 1 kilometer, so that you can get a feel for what the distance. We have about 12 kilometers of ground to explore here. So this is just a touch of what we've got, but it's going very well. So the theory is this deposit here, we call it Nisk Main. We think conceptually this could hold this, sort of in the 8 to 10 million ton range of material. And then our feeling is the way nickel sulfide mines work, as I understand in the world, every existing one that's ever been produced was always what they call multi-pod. So we're on one pod, Nisk Main. We think it will be a multi-pod environment. We'll find 3 or 4 or 5 pods collectively in a geographic area that will end up hopefully producing, and it'll add up to a fairly substantive number. So the thinking theoretically is as we move left and right on the if you're looking at the screen, we're going to come across some faults. We know these faults are out there. We don't know exactly where they are, but we have some ideas. We're drilling up to them, and then what we're going to do is we'll step over the fault, step out 50 meters on either side, left and right, and drill at depth, and hopefully we'll clip the next pod. That's the theory, but we're doing a lot of work on the next pod scenario as we speak. So more to come on that as we go forward. This is an overview of the the overall property package. So as I said, we would expect probably this is an ultramafic deposit. The other ones in the country in Canada that have been developed were Lynn Lake, which was 22 million tons, and Voisey's Bay, which is plus 50. So our geological team feel that we'll be somewhere between those. So that would be obviously very exciting. If that happened, then that would make this $1 billion development in our view, based on current economics. So what are we doing? Just on the action plan, we're going to continue to advance drilling at Nisk. I think we said when we initially started we were around 3,000 or 4,000 meters. Now we're doing 7, and then we would plan to do another 7,000 or so starting in mid-January going forward. We'll obviously try and find these other pods, and we're obviously going to update our 43-101 and get that out as quickly as we can with the full metallurgical workup. And then we would need, ultimately, we expect we'll be sort of fine for drilling up until mid-April, late April, and then there'll be spring break or in the summer breakup, and which is about the only time you can't drill at Nisk. It's about a month there. And then early in June, we would expect to set forth on a drill program from June until December of 15,000 plus meters or so. So we don't need any more money at the moment, or after we get this funds in, we'll be fine through this current stage and the next 7,000 meters. To do the 15,000 meters, at some point we need to do that, but we'll certainly get our 43-101s out by then, and obviously the news flow of our drilling. So that will have a big move on shareholder value. Let's talk about shareholder value and how that might be manufactured here. What would be the steps? Well, there's really 3 ways to win. The first is mining is sort of it's a very difficult business, as you know, and it's basically, in mining, you're a 0 until you become a 1. So what do I mean by that? Well, most exploration plays just don't make it. We know that statistically. It's very tough to find a mine. So, but when you do, there's some point where you go from being just an exploration play and a sort of a long shot of actually finding something to, oh my God, they actually found something and now it's going to be commercial. That transition period is when you go from a 0 to the 1 and your valuations change. So as an example, we're getting paid roughly, give or take, 10 cents a pound of nickel in the ground. Our peer group, which we'll walk to in just a sec, is getting paid anywhere between 4 to 10 plus times that. Well, as the market perceives us as being commercial, we're going to move up. We're going to get somewhere in there. We're going to get, depending upon the market valuation, somewhere between 4 to 10 times for our nickel in the ground that we currently are. So that'll be a big day for us, and it probably won't be just one day. It'll be over a course of time as people believe and see the drill results and say, okay, this is happening. So we're getting a lot of eyeballs now, and that's a good thing. So that's number one. You get paid for more for the nickel you got in the ground by showing that you're going to be commercial. So that's our first and biggest move. Second thing is, hey, find more nickel, because the reason you're going to get to be more commercial is because you found more nickel. So we would have to literally triple, I think, what we've got in the ground to be considered commercial. And I believe that is going to happen here in the next short while. So obviously, if and what's the upside in that? Well, I guess the upside is like our exploration team is looking at Lynn Lake and Voisey's Bay and say somewhere between 20 and 50 million tons is the ultimate upside for something like this. Okay, that would be a great result for us. So that would be, a huge potential win. And then finally, as we see today with nickel being limited up, we modeled our economics at $8 nickel. Nickel today, I think, is 12 or 13 bucks. So there's significant upside potentially in the nickel price as well. So there's a lot of ways to win in nickel. And I think the other thing to consider is that's just general nickel. And then I'm going to go into a little bit about the power nickel plus, which is the fact that we're North American nickel. But let's jump to this slide. These are, there's many nickel projects, okay, but not all nickel projects are the same. So I don't consider, with due respect, Giga Metals or Canada Nickel or those types of deposits as our competitors or peers even, because I don't think we're really competitors. We're all, the world needs more nickel. They need Giga to get in production. They need Canada Nickel to get in production. But they're a different type of deposit. They're a big volume, low grade deposit. Okay, different set of economics. Takes $1 billion plus to put in play. It's a different animal. So I'm not going to spend any time comparing myself to them because that's just not us. The guys you see on the screen here are much more like us. So these are some Australian plays, some Canadian plays. Noront was just bought by Wailu for $480 million US. That's a very comparable project. And you've got the Botswanan play that I think it's premium nickel. Another comparable. So those are the guys that we sort of see as our comparables because of the high grade nickel polymetallic nature of our deposit. So I think when we make our move to being commercial, we're going to find ourselves on this scale on this page, and we'll be somewhere. I think logistically, our mine is the easiest mine to develop of any of these mines. I think it's a very shallow depth. Starts at 80 meters and runs down. It's in a tremendous jurisdiction, arguably the best jurisdiction here. So I would think we'd be favorably matched in here. And so if that happens, you can imagine our market cap today is 10 million. So you guys do the math. That's obviously pretty exciting for us as shareholders. So that's the nickel story. Before I move on, I will make one comment about North American nickel. I was just asked, I'm going to go speak actually on North American nickel at the World Mining Congress in London in mid-December. And I was happy to get an invite. There's like 30 speakers, including the chief investment officer of BlackRock. So we are by far the smallest guy speaking. But we're going to be talking about North American nickel and why I think there'll be bifurcated pricing for high-grade North American nickel. Why would that be? Well, basically, vehicle manufacturers in the U.S., because of the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, want to provide a full subsidy to their buyers. Well, they won't be able to get there unless they have North American nickel. So there's really not a lot. I mean, Talon Metals is probably it looks like that'll be the next mine that gets developed, and they got a 120 million or so, I think there's a number from the U.S. Department of Defense to expedite that. And you know what? Canadian mines are eligible for funding from U.S. Department of Defense as well, and we're certainly going to explore that as we move along the pathway here. So it's pretty interesting, what's happening that way, and we think that North American nickel premium will be something that we benefit from when we ultimately come to selling this opportunity down the road. Just an update on some of our other assets, which I'll quickly rip through. This wasn't the year to spin off our gold and copper assets. The mining markets, as you know, have been savage, and we've suffered, obviously stock price wise from that. And the exploration companies, especially in that sector, have been even more hammered. So in the future, I suspect it looks to me like the gold and silver markets are turning, the copper markets have turned. So I think there'll be a better scenario next year on this. So we've got basically our Golden Triangle project, which we love. We thought was going to be a flagship before I found NISC. Just to refresh your memory, it's basically at the town of Stewart. It's the mountain overlooking the town. It's never been drilled. It's down here. This is Strike Point. This is Scotty Resources. The project, we did some sampling over it last year, and we got half-ounce material at several points at surface, half-ounce gold. That's exciting. Strike Point's best results are literally on our property line. So it's pretty interesting play, and it's very underappreciated at this moment in time. What are those plays worth? Something in this range. They're worth. I say to people, I believe our copper gold assets are worth probably double our existing share price. That's just my own internal belief. That's what we used to trade at. This is sort of supported somewhat by our neighbors and what they're trading at. And I don't think people should buy Power Nickel for the copper and gold play. I think you should buy it because you believe in the nickel story. But the copper gold stories will be a nice hedge and a tremendous bonus when we transact them. So that's what's happening with Golden Ivan. We will, we'll look to transact Golden Ivan and possibly do an M&A transaction or a spin out in Q3 of this year, and we'll be ready to drill there in June. So that would be what would be happening in Golden Ivan. On Chile, we obviously told everyone we were waiting on the results of the Chilean constitutional debate, and that's turned out to be so far positive. They pushed away from the brink and still remain a good company to invest in and country to invest in and move things along. So we're now engaging in conversations with folks on our Chilean assets, which are multiple and good assets. We haven't got anything to the table just yet, but we expect over the coming months we'll be able to do something there transaction-wise as well. So a nice kicker for our shareholders. Finally, our production royalty, our royalty with that we sold to a project we sold to Teck for $3 million at a 3% royalty. That we thought would have been in production by now, but got pushed back when they mothballed QB1 and focused on QB2. So when would this likely get in production? You're looking at, 7 to 10 years is my guess. The ore grade on this is such that there are many copper mines in the world that are producing this type of ore grade. So I believe this will become a mine. I 100% believe that. We would get, using QB1 revenue as an example, if you used the top year in revenue for QB1, I think was in the 500 million range. That was at lower copper prices than current, and 2% of that would be 10 million. So we could get sort of that type of number, 8 to 10 million a year on this when it gets rolling in today's dollar numbers, whatever that might be in the future. So it's not a insignificant asset. It's not why, again, anybody should buy the stock, but we've had offers from people to steal it from us, and we've turned them all down because we while our balance sheet has never been crazy strong, although it's getting stronger now, we internally are not weak, and we said no, we'd never do that. We would always keep our royalty asset. However, we're exploring possibly moving it into an entity where we could get royalty exposure on a group of battery metal projects that is also super undervalued, and maybe that may make sense. We'll see. So there may be something interesting happening there. Again, interesting sort of accentuation of the value proposition. So the team, again, pretty lean. It's just myself and Jimena that are she runs Chile for us, that are running the show. We've just plowed the money in the ground. And then as I think after this round, we'll probably have to add some staff as we're going to move into doing a PEA for Power Nickel for NISC, and we'll need some help with that because I'm not as you know, not a geologist or an engineer. So that'll probably start to come, but with a increased market cap. The board has been always super supportive. Greg used to be an MD at Haywood, a very experienced financier, and he's in the mining sector now. Peter's a retired lawyer, done a great job shepherding us through all the trials and tribulations of being in junior mining. And Les is a very successful businessman who's been there, with his sage advice and checkbook when we've needed him, and we thank them all for their service to the company. This is our current deck in terms of the cap stack. We'll add about 27 million shares in this round, and that will be the new cap stack. So we'll get that out to you for the next update in about a month. So again, just summarizing why now is a great time to if you're already in Power Nickel, God bless. Consider adding more, because I think it's going to do phenomenal over the next little while. If you're or tell your friends, and I don't say that jokingly, but I really, this is I think it's really going to be a good time to be a shareholder. So why? Well, we got drill results that are coming. We're trading at a massive discount to our peer group. I mean, this is all evidence. It's all there. If you believe in the nickel story, then this is in fact a fact. I think we've shown, based upon our historic drill results, even the new ones we did last year, that this is a great place to grow and advance. We're obviously we're in there drilling now. We're expanding drilling. So unless you're completely insane, you don't increase drilling unless you like what you see. So we're going to get the new updated 43-101 out, with the new updated metallurgical studies out end of March, early April. I think it'll show a massive increase in resource, and show that we're going to be commercial. And as I said, when you get commercial, when you go from being an exploration play to hoping to find something, to being a commercial situation, there's a big value jump. I don't know exactly when that's going to happen, but I believe that's about to happen. So that'll be a great time for us. We've got some other things that are working for us. We've got obviously the battery metal sector is hot. We're getting a lot of, I'm doing a lot of speaking now, a lot of podcasts. We're getting more and more exposure. I think that's all good for us. The spin-offs, that will come. It's or there'll be some accretive M&A transaction that'll be a nice bonus for us, and that'll be a happy day. Obviously the leadership team has been committed to this project. We've written our own checks. We've invested our own money. We've suffered through the downturns and stayed here and fought it out. And I think we're about to get paid for all that grief. And we're super lucky in that we're based in Quebec, and in BC, where we've got favorable tax structures that enable us to advance the cause with minimal dilution. So that's the update, for Power Nickel. I think that's about it. So maybe, Cam, might be time to sort of go back and take some questions and see where people want to go on the
absolutely. Up to 100%, Terry. And just as a reminder to everyone that's in the audience, if you have any questions, please ask them in the Q&A chat found on the right-hand side of your screen. Terry, we've already got a bunch, so let's just dive right in. Marcus wants to know, what would you say is the primary reason for current depressed market valuations?
Well, I think for sure there is a flight to liquidity that's happened as a result of the I think over exuberance on the one front, and then the Russian-Ukrainian war was the catalyst for the over exuberance for the air to be let out of the balloon. That all that pent up money printing, etc. So all of a sudden, people left, and there was that flight to liquidity. So I think everyone got punished. Some got punished more than others, but that's generally why it happened. And I think so. You say, well, will it ever change? Because it's still a very scary world out there. And I was talking to a Swiss fund manager just last week about this, about the macroeconomic outlook. And like I said to him, I said, you know what? Even in the Great Depression, some stocks went up. And I think you're going to see now is there's going to be, a tremendous move in the resource sector, especially in the battery metals project, especially in battery metal projects that don't have a ton of CapEx required and that have a real pathway to production and to valuation. And I think, luckily for us, high-grade nickel sulfate mines are not inordinately expensive to develop. They're like $200 million or so, give or take. That sounds a lot of money. If obviously if either of us had to write a check for $200 million, that would be tough. But in the mining scope of things, that means you'd have to raise 60, 70, 80 million in equity. That's not an impossible number. And especially for the IRRs that would be available for a project like this. So I think that's all very doable. So I think that while the macro picture still remains murky overall, and I'm not calling it an end to the current recession that we're all in at the moment. But I do believe there is going to be a switch to investing in resources, maybe in specific battery metal sides. So I think we'll do well, even despite macroeconomic headwinds.
100%. What places Power Nickel on top in terms of carbon friendly production?
A couple of things. Number one, we're basically. I would say in the future, ESG people will start to look at mines and say ESG per unit of output. Okay, like your carbon cost per unit of output will be the drive. So if you're a higher grade mine, that's obviously going to have less output because you're getting more of your material, more nickel, more cobalt, more copper, more palladium per unit of effort. So that's number one, higher grade. Second thing, we're blessed because we're across the road from a major Hydro-Quebec substation. So we're going to use hydroelectric power, which is green, to power our mine. So that's number two. The third thing that we're doing some research on now is, as it turns out, this particular type of rock that we have our nickel in may well be a carbon capture vehicle. So there's been a bunch of work done by a very prominent professor at UBC on this, and we're going to engage and sort of learn more about it and see how it can work for us. But it's possible tailings could actually be carbon capture vehicles, so that it actually, just by nature of the rock itself, it absorbs carbon. So I think we're going to be, honestly, I think we'll be one of the greenest nickel mines ever built. So that'll be fantastic.
That's awesome to hear. When is the financing going to close?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I thought it was going to be closed by now, honestly. And it's not that the money hasn't been there. The money's been there all the way through. It's just been, with the critical mineral tax credits, there's just been a few more pieces of paper that we had to get in place and done. So I expect it's probably going to close, I would think, Wednesday, Thursday this week. But, it's imminent.
Okay, and there's a couple of follow-up questions for that, so I'm just going to stick to that right now. But why did you do the financing in the first place?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, obviously, we held out as long as we could. We were hoping for, I would have rather had done the financing where it should be in my mind. But hey, listen, I always have to disclaim I'm long and therefore recommend. So people have to understand that I'm a believer. But we think honestly this thing should be north of $1, based upon the numbers you see on your screen in front of you. Like we're worthy of being in that category, and we'll get there. So why do we do this now? Well, we had no choice. We were drilling. We like what we see. We can't escape where we're at unless we move forward and show we're commercial. So we got to get there. So we did it with our existing shareholders because we believe there's fundamentally a significant short position on the company. That happened when they were trying to play games after that last, when we put out our press releases and had the stock run, and we're just not going to do business with those guys. So we think what's really interesting about Power Nickel at this stage, this is really the last financing that we absolutely needed. So we needed this money to get to this commercial stage. Once we get to the commercial stage, even if, God forbid, the stock didn't move for some reason that we don't understand today, but we could do a deal above market conditions with industry if we have to finance this thing going forward. So we won't have to go back in the market. So if you're short, I'm giving you like a heads up, brother, you better be covered soon because it's going to get worse for you. And I think the neat thing about nickel, especially North American nickel, is there's all sorts of suitors. I mean, honest to God. I mean, we got the producers want in, i.e. the Glencores, et cetera, Vales, Wyloo, et cetera, those guys. You got the consumers, LG, Panasonic, Tesla, those guys. Then you got the battery makers, and you got the trading houses that deal with all these people, and they all want the North American football. So of nickel. So there's no shortage of dance partners for Power Nickel as we need more money once we have this round of proof in. So that was really killer for us to get done so that we can get to this next level of proof. Now I fully expect the market's going to react, and I'm the short thing is just a bonus. It's not, again, you should buy this deal because you believe the nickel story, 100%. If you don't believe the nickel story, find another story you believe in and invest there.
Fair enough. Question about what you see as the Catalyst roadmap over the coming months.
Yeah, so basically, first I think is the financing, getting closed, because I think there'll always be, and it's well warranted. There's always doubting Thomases on financings until the money's in the bank, and I get that. So we're going to get the money in the bank this week, and that'll be one thing. Second, catalyst will be, okay, let's look at the assays, because again, the drill bits don't lie. So when you get the assays out, you're able to look at that and say, in the context of what we've represented, what we sort of, the 1.5% nickel EQ, this sort of thing. As long as we're hitting that or better, then resources getting, are going to grow, and you're getting better grade, and that's all good for us. So the more we layer that out and people see, holy cow, they're hitting on all their holes, or a vast majority of them, that's phenomenal drilling, and that's going to increase their resource. So yeah, Terry's prediction that they're going to get commercial, maybe we've got to start to believe this guy. So I think that's what's going to happen over the next several months. And then we're going to be back in drilling in January. And again, it takes about, mid-September was when we started drilling. So we've been told we're going to get assays late this week. And then it takes a couple of days to QC them and get them out next week. So that takes about 10 to 12 weeks for the next round. So again, if we start mid-January, that would put us to mid-April, where we're starting to get the next round of assays on the new drilling. So, and in between there, we would have an updated 43-101. So news event wise, we're going to be banging out the assays, the updates, and more assays. So it's going to be pretty substantial. And that'll carry through it until June, and then the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be working on a PEA for the second half of the year. We'll want to get a PEA out so that people can see what would the economics roughly look like in building something like that here, and then in 2024, we'll continue to identify these pods. We've got some interesting, stuff we're working on the geophysics and magnetics that could really enhance discovery here in the region, and we'll be working on that. So that'll come out, and then we'll look to get to a pre-feasibility study in 2024, and continue to mark out the resource, because what will we get paid for in the end? Well, you get paid for the resource we discover, and for de-risking it, so we would think that, ultimately we're probably 18 to 36 months away from a ultimate transaction here. But that's the roadmap.
No, fair enough. Thanks, Terry. And there's just a question from Michelle asking how many years until you start production?
So there's some interesting talks from our governments about, green lighting in an expeditious way, critical mineral projects such as NISC. So a good way to answer it, I guess, is look at Talon Metals. They're currently, not in production. They're currently just dirt, like we are. They're further advanced. They've got, a PEA done, and they expect to be in production in 2017. I think that that will take significant work on their part, and God bless. I hope they make that happen. For us, or 2027. Pardon me, 2017. Losing my mind, but 2027. For us, I would think as quick as we could do it would be 2028, 2029, using all the expedited efforts from the governments to greenlight these things. But that would be happening. Now, we, as I said from the outset, Power Nickel will not build this mine. That's not our expertise. But the people we sell it to, that's the pathway they could probably look to. But we do have I think we do have an ability to go and get I think some additional funding from the U.S. and Canadian governments to build the mine. That could be some part of the reward for our shareholders. Talon Metals got I think 120 million US dollars to help towards their building of the mine, set aside. So I think those types of projects are available, and we'll certainly look to see if we can justify getting some of those for our project.
All right. We also have a couple questions about this topic. So we have a general question about if you could just talk about drilling, but there's also a question from Klaus about when you're drilling Golden Triangle.
Hi, Klaus. How are you doing? Klaus is a big shareholder, been here since for forever. So great guy. Golden Triangle will probably get drilling in June of next year, would be our guess. And we go from there. And then the current state of drilling, obviously we raised the funds so we could expand the drilling. So expand it significantly before Christmas, and obviously doubling it again after Christmas. So again, obviously, unless we're completely mad, and remember, we're spending our own money, so we'd really be mad. We like what we see with the drilling. So again, we're not Nostradamus, so we can't forecast what the assays will be, but we believe they'll be in line or better than the drill results we produced to date. So that's about all we can say.
Fair enough. Mitch wants to know how long until you think that Power Nickel is going to get back over 40 cents?
Well, that could happen very soon. I'm optimistic that happens, before the end of the year. But again, I've got no. I'm again not Nostradamus, and you can't hold me to that. But it's certainly well warranted, and it should happen tomorrow, in my view, or this afternoon. But it probably won't. So, but it's coming, I believe, because based on the financing getting done, based on the assays coming out, and again supporting the story. And there's a lot of eyeballs on us now, and we're getting out there, and I'm now pounding the table, saying, this exactly what I just said today. And if people can't look at the evidence that we've given and see this as a fundamentally great speculation, a great place to place a bet for part of your investment dollars, well, I'd like to know where the better ones are, because I like to invest in them too, because this is phenomenal right now.
Awesome. Mitch also has a question about earning extra shares as shareholders for the Golden Triangle. This is in reference to something in the past, so hopefully you can answer that.
Yeah. So basically, what we've talked about in the past was spinning out a company that either would hold just the Golden Triangle or the Golden Triangle and the Chilean assets. So we had planned to do it, last year, and then the market just completely crapped out, and we just felt that would have been the wrong time. And we honestly we needed to focus what limited resources we had on NISC, which is where the real home run is going to come here. So, but going forward, we'd expect that looks like the market's going to be open for exploration in projects like the Golden Ivan and in Chile, which are copper, silver, gold. So both precious metals and those copper, silver are power metals or electric metals. We'll have interesting investors. So I think we could do that, and we'll do that this Q3. And either we'll end up spinning it out, or we'll end up doing some M&A transaction that allows us to get a stock that we ultimately either can monetize to prevent dilution in Power Nickel, or we can dividend out to our shareholders to give them a bonus stock to have, which was the initial concept.
All right. Well, look, Terry, that's all the questions we've received for today. So I want to thank you for coming on, and of course, everyone that's joined us today, especially those who've asked questions. But before we wrap up, I'd like to pass things back to you for some closing remarks.
Okay. Well, listen, we've tried to give you guys an update on everything. This is sort of as current as it can be. It's we're as you can see, we're pretty excited about the progress we're making, and we're really looking forward to driving it home for our long-suffering shareholders. I mean, I've been in this thing for 10 years, and I got into it to help my best friend in the investment, and it's been a long time. So I think we're finally going to get into some happier. We're going to be turning the frowns upside down, And so I think it's I know people like Klaus has been here for 10 plus years, and he's suffered along with us and written checks along the way, and Les and many great shareholders that have enabled us to survive and get through here. And I think we're finally going to be able to get some rewards here. So it's a good time. So watch your emails, get the updates, see that the financing gets closed, see the assays come out and are in line with what we're talking about. And, I think, hold on, it's going to be a good run here, and we're finally going to get some long rewards for our long suffering shareholders. So that's about it for now. And we'll look forward to talking in a month or so. We'll have a bunch of the assays that we can speak about. We may even do a, Cam and I were talking about it beforehand. We may, as the assays go out, we may do an actual, drilling update call on the assays, what that might mean. So we'll have that conversation in the coming weeks. So until then, thanks for attending. And as always, if you have any questions, you can email me directly, and I'll try and, we're pretty transparent here. So help you if we can. So, and have a great day, and thanks for attending.